Hey, this is Mark Dhamma, high performance health and mindset coach for entrepreneurs. Question from Jason: how do you recover fast when you fail? Well, it sounds like, Jason, the problem is that you've had a failure, something didn't work, you had a setback, and it's affecting your performance, so you're not focusing on your business, you're not moving ahead, you're not getting back on your feet and performing at your best. That's what it sounds like. That's what the problem is. Now, this is a problem because it can hold you. I know people who have had a setback or failure. They failed in something and they got something called learned helplessness. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Was a social experiment. Not a social, it was actually an experiment with dogs. I believe it was back in the 70s. And one of the founders of positive psychology, a guy called Dr. Martin Seligman, who early in his career, he created this experiment with dogs. What he did is, I'm simplifying the experiment. It wasn't exactly like this, but it was similar enough. He got some dogs and put them in a cage, put some in one cage and some in another cage. And in one of the cages, the floor was an electrified floor. So if you pushed a button, the dogs would get electrocuted, okay? And what Dr. Seligman wanted to find out is, he wanted to find out if the dogs would try and escape and how often they would try and escape. So 2 cages, dog in each one, and experiment was replicated. I told you I was going to mess up this experiment, but this is sort of right. 2 cages, dog in each one. Both had electrified floors. One of the dogs, in one of the cages, the door was open. So if the dog wanted to get out, he could hit the door and the door would open. On the other cage, the door was locked. So if the dog got electrocuted and he tried to hit the door wouldn't open. Okay? So Dr. Seligman, as cruel as it is, and he admits that it was cruel later on, and now he doesn't like doing experiments with animals anymore. He's against it, and he says he doesn't like what he did anyway, for the animal lovers like myself. It hit the electrified floor. Both of the dogs tried to escape. Of course, one of them could escape because the door was open, and one of them couldn't, so they got electrified. Now, after a while of repeating this experiment, something very strange happened. The dog whose door was locked, eventually it would just lay down and not even try and escape. It wouldn't even go to the door. It was like, oh, you know what? There's nothing I can do, so I'm just going to lay down anyway. Dr. Seligman swapped them. He put them in different cages. So the dog that couldn't escape before, he put that dog into a cage where it could escape. He electrified the floors. Guess what the dog did? The one that couldn't escape before, in the new cage where he could escape, guess what the dog did? Yep, you guessed it. He didn't even try and escape. He just lay down and got electrocuted. All it had to do was push the door, and the door would have opened because this was a new door. It wasn't locked. It could have got through. But it didn't. It in fact had learned helplessness. Learned helplessness. That's when people, or dogs or animals, but it happens to people too, is when they think they have no control of the situation and they can't do anything to turn the situation around, so they just lay on the back, don't do anything. Now, you may know some people in your own life who do that. The question from Jason is, how do you recover when you fail? Well, what I would recommend is that you change your relationship with failure. You change your relationship with failure. What does that mean? Well, most of us, including myself, have been taught that failure's really bad. Ooh, it's bad to fail. Oh, you're such a failure in life if you fail. Okay, it's bad. Well, that's not necessarily true. A mentor of mine, Tai Lopez, taught me this actually very early on when I was working with him for a while. He never sees success or failure. He doesn't look at life like that. And a lot of entrepreneurs don't. He sees life as experiments. Sees everything as an experiment. And he'll see either a failed experiment or he'll see a successful experiment. And a failed experiment doesn't mean that you're a failure and it's all bad. It just means it didn't work. It's like dispassionate, like, it's an experiment. Oh, let me see, did that work? No, that one didn't work. Let's move on to the next. Whereas most of us, including what it sounds like you, Jason, is when you fail, you make it about you. You let your ego get involved and like, oh, it's hurt my ego. I failed. You know, the dog, instead of the dog didn't see the door being closed, it's like, oh, I tried to get out, it's a failed experiment. It just thought, oh, there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to lay on my back. It's over. There's nothing I can do. It's out of my control. So one of the ways that you can bounce back quickly from failure is realizing it's a learning experience. You had a failed experiment, you can learn from it and you can move on. It's not a big deal. The other thing you can do is focus on what you want. If you've got an experiment and it failed, you take your learnings and then you go and apply it to something else. If you just focus on the failed experiment, oh, it failed, I can't believe it just failed, oh my God, it's so terrible, it failed, and you just keep focusing on the failure, then you can't focus on success. You can't focus on success. So for you, Jason, and for you watching, the way you quickly get over a failure is take it for what it is. It was a failed experiment. Okay, it was a failed experiment. Now what do I want? How can I apply the lessons to what I actually want? And then do your next experiment. Focus on the next one. Focus on what you want instead of what you don't want. And that's a fast way to bounce back from failure. Now, if another thing I'd recommend is definitely just getting your momentum back. And one of the best ways to get your momentum back is through a solid morning routine. And I've got a program, it's called Dominate Your Day. I actually designed it for entrepreneurs like yourself to make sure that every day you're at your best. So you're psychologically at your best, you're thinking, you're positive, because positivity, if you're creating positive emotions, it allows you to get your head away from failures and it allows you to start thinking about solutions, creative solutions. And also Dominate Your Day allows you to focus on what you want rather than what you don't want. So it's like the perfect morning routine to get your brain focused on what you want with positive emotions so you can have a really, really successful day. And it's especially helpful if you've lost a bit of momentum, if you've had a bit of a setback, it'll help you get back on track. So if that sounds like something that interests you, it'd be useful for you, then you should see a link below or it's going to pop up and you can check out Dominate Your Day.